It's Wednesday, November 29. In the headlines, Jamaicans encouraged to eat Jamaican. In business news, Scotiabank ABMs upgraded for new polymer banknotes. Regionally, more resources to help women with disabilities needed. Internationally, talks underway to extend Israel-Hamas agreement. And in sports, Reggae Girls versus Panama on Wednesday. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The government will be targeting sweet potato, yam and orchard crops under its new food security matrix. Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, Floyd Green, says while the aim is to support all farmers, the ministry seeks to be more strategic with specific crops. He was speaking on the JIS talk show Get the Facts with Theodore Henry.
We are doing national programs now around not only sweet potato and yam, but our orchard crops, breadfruit, ackee, and mangoes.
Okay.
Right, so what you see there is that we look at food security, we also look at export expansion, plus we're supporting our small ruminant sector.
He says Jamaica consumes a great amount of mutton, but most of it is imported, and that has to change.
80% of that is imported.
Yeah.
It's not goat meat.
We import goat meat.
It's not even goat. Oftentimes it's mutton, it's sheep.
What you say?
Yeah, so we are not meeting our demand for our local goat. So we have a project now to push that. So I want to encourage everybody, get involved in our small ruminant sector. The Ministry of Finance worked with us. We took off GCT and duty if you want to bring in goats to strengthen your breeding stock. And we have an artificial insemination program now that we're looking to drive the massive expansion of our goat herds. We need to satisfy our goat demand.
Jamaica recently celebrated Eat Jamaica Day on November 25. The ministry celebrated the day with a series of activities aimed at encouraging residents to consume Jamaican produce. Mr. Henry asked Minister Green about the ways in which Jamaicans can continue to support local farmers.
One, we need more people to have appreciation for agriculture in general, and that's why we started Eat Jamaican Month by launching our backyard gardening program, where we have already taken applications for 3,000 backyard gardening kits. We find that if more people appreciate what goes into agriculture, what goes into farming, then more people will consistently support our farmers, So we need to see more people thinking about their own food security, looking at their backyard gardens. Again, you don't need a lot of space, right? Agriculture technology has evolved now. We do vertical farming, hydroponic systems. So even if you have a small space, you can grow some of what you eat. I would think that's important. Outside of that, I've always said to people, why not encourage our children to look for professions in agriculture?
The Eat Jamaican campaign was launched by the late Governor General of Jamaica, Sir Howard Cook, through a proclamation that was issued on November 25, 2003, declaring November 25th annually as Eat Jamaican Day. Local farmers now have improved access to services provided by the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, RADA, through its app. Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, Floyd Green, says the development is a big move for the sector. He says, quote, "The only way we're going to get more young people in agriculture and the only way we're going to have the reach that we need to move agriculture forward is through utilization of technology. We have to evolve in the agricultural space," end quote. He was speaking at a November 24 National Eat Jamaica Day ceremony in Portland recently. With the app, which is available for download on Android devices, farmers can access a wealth of information, including crop monitoring techniques, pest control strategies, and sustainable farming practices at their fingertips. The Jamaica National Agency for Accreditation is celebrating 15 years of existence. Since its inception, Janak has been carrying out its mandate of facilitating trade between Jamaica and its trading partners by enabling Jamaica's conformity assessment system to meet international standards and the World Trade Organization's Agreement on Technical Barriers to Trade. The organization is celebrating its anniversary with an award ceremony slated for the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel in New Kingston on Monday, December 4. Janak's Director of Strategic Planning, Business Development and Promotions, Casita Green, shared the details at a recent JIS think tank.
We are proud to work with laboratories, inspection and certification bodies that provide critical services to some of the sectors that we depend on for our everyday lives: healthcare, food, manufacturing, national security, energy, and others.
Awards will also be presented to the National Environment and Planning Agency's laboratory and the Plant Quarantine Produce Inspection Branch within the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining. These conformity assessment bodies were recently accredited to the ISO IEC 1725-2017 and the ISO IEC 1720-2012 standards, respectively.
We will be inducting some entities in the Janak Hall of Fame, Accreditation Hall of Fame. And these are laboratories and other entities that are accredited by us that have demonstrated through their accredited services how they're impacting export and growth here in Jamaica. We're also going to be acknowledging our rising stars. We have a Rising Star Award, and that is for those entities that have just started going through the accreditation process, but they have demonstrated an excellent start to that journey.
Ms. Green says recipients will additionally receive awards under the Ignite category in recognition of the conformity assessment body providing significant export sector support. A minor earthquake rattled sections of Jamaica on Tuesday afternoon. The quake had an estimated measurement of magnitude 4.2. There was no immediate report of damage or injury. Jamaica has experienced several notable earthquakes in recent times. It is very important to know what to do before, during, and after an earthquake to ensure that you are safe.
Before an earthquake occurs, an emergency response plan should be in place, which should be understood by all occupants of a building or institution. It's also important to select safety wardens to manage the movement of personnel inside and outside of a building and to check the building before re-entry. Safety wardens should also conduct periodic earthquake drills to ensure everyone is clear about what to do when a disaster takes place. Another tip is to identify safe spots at home, work, and frequently visited locations. These spots include under sturdy tables or desks, structurally sound or strongly supported doorways, and inside of a small room or hallway. Parents and guardians are also encouraged to talk to their children about natural disasters and steps they should take to protect themselves.
During an incident of this nature, we know that it gets a little bit dramatic and persons want to call each other, but we are asking persons not to use cell phones during these kind of incidents unless it is absolutely necessary.
Desist from making prank calls to the emergency services such as the police and the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
What it does is tie up resources that are needed elsewhere, and so it makes our job that much more difficult.
If you are inside of a building, use the drop, cover, and hold technique and stay put until the shaking stops. If you are outside, stay at least 10 feet away from any building from which window, glass, and other debris could fall. Move away from trees, streetlights, and power lines. Crouch down and cover your head. If you are in a vehicle, park in a location away from trees, wires, buildings, bridges, and overpasses. Stay where you are with your safety belt fastened until the earthquake is over. Never stop under or on a bridge. Be patient, be courteous, obey road traffic regulations, follow the directions of the police, yield immediately to emergency vehicles, and do not block intersections. After the earthquake, exit buildings by using the stairs and not elevators. Inspect buildings for cracks, shifts in pillars, posts, and other beams and structural members, and seek a professional assessment if there is any damage.
Time now for the Business Report with Danita Rodney.
Scotiabank Jamaica customers will now be able to deposit their cash with ease as the bank says it has completed the upgrade of its automated banking machines (ABMs) to accept the new polymer banknotes. In a post to social media, the bank says it has finished the enhancements of its smart deposit intelligent deposit machines island-wide. Scotia says the machine will now accept both new and old notes. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Tuesday, November 28, the US dollar sold for an average of $156.17. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $115.44. The pound sterling traded for $196.64, and the euro sold for $172.21. In JSE trading, the JSE index declined by over 3,454 points. The junior market index declined by over 4 points. The combined market index declined by over 3,283 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by over 3,930 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 97 stocks, of which 32 advanced, 43 declined, and 22 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited, and Caribbean Producers Jamaica Limited. Stocks declined for Access Financial Services Limited, Verita Investments Limited, and Cargo Handlers Limited. Trading firm were A.S. Bryden and Sons Holdings Limited, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Elite Diagnostic Limited. The overall volume leaders were Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares, Trans Jamaican Highway Limited, and One-on-One Educational Services Limited with over 1 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted a volume of 45 shares. Zero Securities traded on the Barbados Stock Exchange. In regional business, Trinidad and Tobago's Massey Holdings celebrates 100 years with increased profits. We have the details in this Business Watch report.
Massey Holdings Limited has raised its century with very profitable returns. In the company's financial statements for the 12-month period ended September 30th, 2023, Chairman Robert Riley says third-party revenue grew from 12.3 billion TT dollars, or US 1.8 billion in financial year 2022, to $14.2 billion, or US 2.1 billion in financial year 2023. Profit before tax from continuing operations grew from TT 995 million, or US 148 million in 2022, to 1.2 billion, or US 182 million in 2023, while profit after tax grew by 21%. Riley notes that the acquisition of Rose IGA Supermarkets, Air Liquid Trinidad and Tobago, and IGL St. Lucia Limited generated an additional TT $1.1 billion in revenue.
In international business, Wall Street ended slightly higher as all three major U.S. stock indexes lost momentum but ended the range-bound session in the green.
U.S. stocks finished slightly higher Tuesday after trading in a narrow range as investors parsed conflicting remarks from Federal Reserve officials, with upbeat consumer data providing some lift. The Dow added 0.25%, the S&P 500 rose 0.1%, and the Nasdaq climbed 0.3%. Fed Governor Christopher Waller said on Tuesday he is increasingly confident that the current level of the central bank's policy rate is sufficiently restrictive, and even hinted at the possibility of rate cuts in the months ahead. And Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee touted progress in bringing inflation down. But Fed Governor Michelle Bowman suggested another rate hike could be necessary to rein in inflation in a timely manner. Market Vector Index's head of product management, Joy Yang, said she doesn't think the Fed will reduce interest rates anytime soon.
My take is, given the resilience in what we've seen in some of these numbers, specifically the labor market, consumer spending, the economy itself, it seems like, we're not at the end of inflation, until we see the labor market come down significantly, I think we're still, higher for longer.
Data out Tuesday showed consumer confidence surprised to the upside, while the National Retail Federation said consumers plan to spend about 5% more during the holiday season this year. Stocks on the move included Boeing, which climbed more than 1% after RBC Capital Markets upgraded shares from sector perform to outperform. Also, Micron Technology, which dropped nearly 2% after the chipmaker said it expects higher first-quarter operating expenses than previously forecast.
In market data for oil prices rose on Wednesday as investors turned their attention to an OPEC Plus meeting to decide on the output policy, while supply disruption caused by a storm in the Black Sea and lower U.S. inventories drove buying. Brent crude futures gained 86 cents to $82.54 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude futures gained 93 cents at $77.34 a barrel. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, Caribbean Airlines Limited is seeking an intervention from Trinidad and Tobago's Ministry of Labor following a breakdown of negotiations with the TNT Airline Pilots Association. The rift follows ongoing negotiations for the collective agreement for pilots from the period September 1, 2015 to August 31, 2018. According to Antigua Newsroom, after careful consideration, Caribbean Airlines Limited has decided to engage the process under the Industrial Relations Act and to have the matter reported to the Minister of Labor. In the Bahamas, not shocking is how Free National Movement Chairman Dr. Dwayne Sands is describing the IMF's assessment of the Davis administration's 2023-2024 budget projections. More in this report.
The IMF is warning the fiscal deficit will be higher than forecast. The opposition has not been shy about criticizing the government's fiscal projections. Here's Dr. Sands.
We have said from a very long time ago that this government is a tax and spend reckless administration. They are spending money like it can't done. Contract here, contract there. In the by-election in West Grand Bahama and Bimini, they would have made promises for hundreds of millions of dollars of capital works. Imagine that they're doing it all over the place. We can build a new hospital here, we can build this here, a new prison there, and so on. At the same time, they are taxing Bahamians to death.
The International Monetary Fund estimates the current fiscal year's deficit will be considerably larger than that expected in the budget at 2.6% of gross domestic product. It nearly triples the Davis administration's forecast of a deficit equivalent to 0.9% of GDP.
When the IMF now says that this administration, based on the numbers that they've seen, will miss their projections, not by a factor of 5%, 10%, 20%, but by a factor of several 100%, instead of 0.9% of GDP, they're going to fall short by about 2.7% or $400 million. That is a serious thing. They are going into people's bank accounts and raiding bank accounts in order to get real property tax. They are taking money from poor people by making them pay VAT on breadbasket items.
The COVID-19 pandemic negatively impacted the world in various ways and resulted in heightened reports of gender-based violence against women. And a recent report done in Guyana highlighted the need for essential resources for women living with disabilities.
The unveiling of the community research report titled Women with Disabilities and Gender-Based Violence in Emergency Situations and Beyond, Lessons from COVID-19 was held on Tuesday at the Guyana National Library. This qualitative study by the York University, the University of the West Indies, Red Thread Guyana and the National Commission on Disability will be presented to the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security and other government agencies as part of lobbying efforts for legislative reform to cater to the needs of persons living with disabilities. The report delves into the unique experiences of women with disabilities in Guyana, both before and during the challenging period of COVID-19 lockdowns. It sheds light on the often overlooked intersectionality of gender and disability, providing insights that can inform policies and interventions, Kendra Ann Pitt, a researcher on the team, said.
One of the things that we realized from speaking to women is that there were a series of experiences, of marginalization and exclusion that really informed how they even responded to gender-based violence in COVID-19. So women talked about the experiences of stigma, women talked about the experiences of being excluded from education, being excluded from employment.
Some 30 women participated from regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. They shared that during the pandemic, they had severe challenges in accessing basic needs. In particular, for persons living with disabilities, they rely on the people around them for support. Ruth Rodney, another researcher, said 52 recommendations based on the findings are included in the report.
So what we want to do is really look to create a comprehensive framework for government and CSO services, which are widely available across geographical locations in Guyana. So one of the things that we heard from women is that not only are services sometimes centrally located, but also within regions, if the services were more widely disseminated or decentralized, it would address the challenges. It should be in consultation with the disability community to eliminate stigma and oppressive conditions experienced by the disability communities within Guyana in their familial homes, intimate relationships, and wider society.
Some of the recommendations include the revision of the Disability Act, the Domestic Violence Act, and the Sexual Offences Act to focus on accessibility for diverse women.
Barbados' efforts at seeking to bring about change in international financing have been lauded as a visiting professor of economics says there is a need for change and reconstructing for the count. Professor in the Economics of Innovation and Public Value at University College London, Mariana Mazzucato, says countries like Barbados and others in the global south are bearing the consequences of capitalism.
The double jeopardy is that we've also created an international financial system that not only is not prepared to deal with that, but has actually also contributed to the crisis itself by having, for example, very problematic conditions tied to loans provided to countries, conditional often on reducing public investment and public spending with some voodoo number of the deficit figure that needs to be met. We actually also haven't prepared countries to think in this proactive way of how to structure public finance, public investment in order to not just expand the productive capacity of a country, but also to expand it in a way of what I'll be talking about today to make sure it's in fact inclusive and sustainable.
In international news, it's the sixth and final day of the Gaza truce agreed between Hamas and Israel. After a 2-day extension, it's set to expire on Thursday. But talks are on the way to extend the pause in hostilities. Al Jazeera's correspondent Imran Khan has the latest development.
Well, certainly all parties are talking quite positively about the negotiations ongoing. The international community, Qatar, who is kind of leading the negotiations between Hamas and Israel. The Americans also very keen that the ceasefire should continue. But what are the details of what are the negotiations going on? Well, that's obviously being kept very, very secret. But we do know from leaks coming out that there are negotiations to release additional captives and extending the ceasefire by another 5 days. Now, they're doing this over 5 categories. The 5 categories they're talking about are releasing Israeli captives, elderly men, firstly, who are too old to be reservists. Now, the reason they bring the word reservists up is because military-aged males and females here have to do national service. So the idea that once you're too old to do that, then perhaps you can be released a bit more. Then it's female soldiers, reservist soldiers, and then the bodies, actually, of Israelis who were killed before or during a captivity. So that seems to be what they're negotiating on. There seems to be positive noises actually coming from Hamas about this as well. Hamas is, according to the Qatari, according to leaks towards the Qataris rather, has said they are very keen to respect what the Israelis want in terms of these 5 categories. But there's a lot of pressure from the right wing in Israel, who actually control the government, that this ceasefire should not go on indefinitely. In fact, there is a deadline that keeps being said, and that is the deadline of Sunday. 10 days of a ceasefire is about all the Israelis may well be able to stomach if all of these leaks are to be believed. That happens on Sunday. After Sunday, if the ceasefire lasts that long, the Israelis will want to go back in. And we keep hearing this, not just from sources, but actually publicly from people like the Daniel Hagari, who's the Israeli army spokesman, saying that we will go back into Gaza. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
In sports, the Reggae Girls face off against Panama in their CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup qualifier at the National Stadium on Wednesday at 7. The girls sit at the bottom of the 3-team group with 1 point from 2 games. Panama is in the lead with 6 points from 3 matches, and Guatemala is second on 4 points from 3 games. The Trinidad and Tobago's Football Association has released the provisional squad named by the national women's team head coach Richard Hood ahead of the final group match in the CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup. Wayne Cunningham has more.
The provisional squad for Trinidad and Tobago's upcoming CONCACAF W Road to Gold Cup qualifier against Mexico has been selected by head coach Richard Hood. The squad sees the inclusion of the experienced campaigners Karen Forbes, Victoria Swift, Jonelle Cato, Maria Francis Sarant, Asha James, and Naomi Guerra, amongst others, with the notable absentees being goalkeeper Kamika Forbes, forward Alexia Ali, who has scored the lone TNT goal of the campaign thus far, and defender Rhea Belgrave, who has not featured in the campaign to date, but has been active locally for ACPOS. On September 26, Trinidad and Tobago lost to Mexico 6-0 in their opening game of the tournament, before falling to Puerto Rico at the Hazley Crawford Stadium 2-1 on October 27th. TNT then traveled to Puerto Rico and drew 0-0 4 days later. Mexico sits atop the League A Group A points table on 6 from 2 games, while Puerto Rico is second with 4 points from their 3 matches. TNT has 1 point from 3 games. The Mexico match will be played at the Hazley Crawford Stadium next Tuesday, December 5th at 7 p.m. St. Vincent and the Grenadines will face Barbados in an earlier match from 4 p.m. Wayne Cunningham, TTT Sport.
And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thanks for watching.